From federal funding cuts to executive orders, higher education taking center stage. The UMass Boston Chancellor is here to talk about it and more. It's time to go on the record.
From WCVB Channel 5, the inside word from Washington to Beacon Hill. Today's newsmakers are going on the record.
Good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining us. I'm Ben Simino in for Ed Harding.
And I'm Charmin Sacchetti. And joining us at the table today is UMass Boston Chancellor Marcelo Suárez-Orozco. He has served there since 2020. He has spent time in roles at Harvard, NYU, and UCLA. As a teenager, his parents sent him to the United States from Argentina to avoid war. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I'm so happy to join you.
Chancellor, let's start with the challenges facing higher education. It's certainly an interesting time for your field. Let's talk about the federal funding cuts. How worried are you about this?
I think we're all worried because the story of American higher education is really the story of how the United States led the world in terms of technology, science, medicine, and of course the entire architecture of what we now call the STEM fields. Yeah. So technology, science has enormously benefited our country. Every dollar invested by the federal government in terms of the basic research machinery of the country has produced extraordinary results for us. From the time when Oppenheimer brought particle physics from Germany to the United States, we've led the world in terms of basic and translational science. That lives in higher education.
And have you seen grants just go away?
We've had a number of grants terminated.
How much are we talking about?
We're talking about a dozen or so.
But we're talking millions of dollars?
We're talking about millions of dollars.
And you were just recently named a top research institution, put you in the company of places like Harvard and MIT. What do you think the future is looking like right now?
So it's challenging and it's very worrisome. In fact, UMass Boston is unique in that we've had R1 status now officially granted to us by the Carnegie Foundation, which does the classifications. We've also been named by Carnegie a high access institution. Typically, the algorithm works. R1s tend to have low access. We're one of a handful of schools in Boston, in New England, that has both Research 1, that means high research productivity, and high access, meaning we take as our students, communities, students that are often not best well served by the R1 institutions. So that's a true achievement. That's a real feather here in our cap.
Let's talk about immigration. We just saw an ICE crackdown, a month-long ICE crackdown here in Massachusetts. We've seen student visas getting revoked by the federal government. Have you seen that at UMass Boston, and is it having an impact on foreign students and enrollment?
So we have approximately 1,500 international students. That's about 10% of the student population. So they've been impacted of the new ban that was announced recently this week.
The travel ban.
The travel ban. We have approximately about 50 students from the impacted countries.
So you're telling them not to leave, I would imagine.
We're telling them not to leave, and we're telling them if they're overseas or if they're anywhere else to return before Monday.
Have any had their visas revoked?
We've had students had their visas revoked. That self-corrected, meaning the visas were revoked. We mobilized to offer supports, legal, counseling, advice on how to proceed. Those revocations went away. So all our students were reinstated. Now, the impact on international students is very significant because, again, one of the advantages public higher education in our country has had is our ability to attract talent from all over the world. And this has multiple implications for us. First, we're facing a demographic winter. in the Commonwealth, meaning the high school population, birth rates are down. So international students are part of the solution.
So let me ask you about that. So this administration's now been in office for 5 months. Have you seen international students who say, I'm not coming?
We are concerned in terms of what we will see come the fall. Because
so
that's
for next year.
Correct. That's really the truth moment. When do students arrive, or do students decide either to defer or pursue their education elsewhere?
I'm not sure if you've been told this, but in Massachusetts, the law is that some undocumented students are able to qualify for in-state tuition. They live here, they're able to qualify for that. Do you think that that will be impacted moving forward?
So we are blessed to be in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, where some of the noise that flows from directives or dear colleague letters that fundamentally lack the weight of the law, we turn to the Commonwealth, we turn to the Attorney General of the Commonwealth for guidance. And we believe, for example,
but
that
it looks like the state is going to fund that right now.
We very much hope, and again, there's a very powerful case to be made. Again, it's demographic. It has to do with what the students bring, and it has to do with what Ben just noted. We're having a declining population here. We need every student we can get. And international.
And we're seeing that across the country.
We're seeing that across the country. This is a reality. Some states are more impacted than others.
We have to talk about the elephant in the room with higher education, and that's the fight between Harvard and this administration. You mentioned the law there. The university has been the target on several fronts of the president, the White House, his administration. Harvard's fighting back. Are you worried about what's going to happen?
So I am.
You were a professor at Harvard.
And my wife of 49 years is a professor at Harvard. So I don't really have anything to add to what is widely known about the nature of the conflict between the university and the White House. What I'd like to say is the following. Harvard and Columbia educate a minute proportion of the world that is students in higher education. Over 90% of students in higher education today are not in the Ivies, are not at Harvard, and not at Columbia. If you want to understand and sort of reflect upon the experience of either international, immigrant, or just our native students, UMass Boston faces an entirely different set of preoccupations. So while, of course, the issues, the assaults on Harvard are particular to the university, they also telecast because Harvard stands for really all of higher education in our country.
That's the question, right? I mean, it's the preeminent university, most would say, in this country, and so to have this very public fight, does that do a lot of damage to a lot of other institutions like yours when it comes to reputations of students wanting to come here?
Well, that's the elephant in the room, as you said, Ben, because international education has been an extraordinary benefit to our country for a number of reasons. Demographic, we just talked about it. Cognitive, we live in the cognitive era. The human mind proceeds from the awareness of opposites, meaning to have a student from another country that views the world conceptually, socio-emotionally, with schemas, cognitive and socio-emotional, that are different from ours. That is an enormous plus. So there are demographic, there are cognitive and socio-emotional, there are financial considerations, there are diplomatic considerations.
1 million, I think, international students.
We have about 1 million international students coming to our country. We're the premier destination. If you're
bottom line, is Harvard doing the right thing, fighting back?
I think that Harvard is doing the right thing in terms of protecting the autonomy of the university.
Quick break, be right back.